Happy New Month and happy Workers' Day to everybody watching and listening to us. Thank you so much for starting another month with us. It's quite symbolic that the first day of the month falls on a Monday, that you're starting that day with us here on Morning Spring on Western Spring Television. My name is Emmanuel Ujadigele, and it's good to have you join us on the show this morning, have you interact with us, follow the conversation live on all our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and on Facebook, on YouTube at Western Spring Television. Don't forget that we're reaching you live from StarTimes channel 190 on the DTT platform. Thank you so much for beginning your month with us. It promises to be an exciting month, starting with a public holiday. There's the Children's Day, there's the swearing in, and a lot of activities lined up for this month. Thank you for starting your day with us.
Wow, it's a beautiful new day, beautiful new month, and happy Workers' Day to all the dutiful, responsible, and diligent workers out there. And to the ghost workers too, well, I hope you can amend your ways this particular time and be dutiful as well. Well, it's a beautiful morning. Thanks for joining us on the Morning Spring on Western Spring Television. I'm Timmy Chokwe Ajijola Oluwala, and I have several reasons to be happy today because it's May the 1st, and it's Workers' Day. We also have Children's Day this month and Democracy Day. It's May 29th, the swearing-in day. That was former Democracy Day, as it is. And yes, it's also my birth month, so I'm very happy this month. Beautiful new month indeed.
All right, so that's it. It's a beautiful, it promises to be a beautiful month with lots of activities lined up.
Yes.
A lot of things to look forward to, the change in guard, change in power in Nigeria here, and some other celebrations that will be taking place in the course of the month. Well, what we do for you on the show here is divided into three segments. We have the newspaper review segment where we talk about what's making the rounds on the faces of the national dailies. We bring them to you, show you the papers and what's on their faces. And we also have interviews with our guests where we discuss socio-political, socio-economic, and socio-cultural issues as they affect us living in Nigeria, or people living in Nigeria. And I also bring you spring trends where I tell you who's trending, what's happening, what the discussion is about on social media. That's what we'll do for you on the program. We'll take a quick break. Now, when we come back, we'll bring you the papers. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to the show. We'll begin with the Punch newspaper this morning. The Punch newspaper is where we start. The Punch, Monday, May 1st, 2023. 8-year scorecard. Workers lament hardship. Score Buhari governors low on welfare. That's on page 2. Workers lament hardship. Score Buhari governors low on welfare. High cost of living has made nonsense of minimum wage. 40% pay rise coming from the unions there. And pensioners still earning 500 naira, 750 naira monthly. Economic harsh under Buhari. Retirees. Some not so glowing remarks about the leadership of President Muhammadu Buhari and governors under him over the course of 8 years by the workers' unions there and retirees.
Yeah. Well, I would think that workers would have been happy with the 40% pay rise. I think I was happy for them. But, they've given us their reality that the minimum wage, the 40% pay rise, has not done anything to add to, or to alleviate their challenges or problems. We would think that probably today would bring about lots of discussions around these issues, and maybe, their situation can be bettered before the end of this administration or just at the inception of the coming administration. We hope that that will happen and these people can have better, welfare. And for the pensioners, it's surprising that we're having them earning 500 naira or 750 monthly, according to some of them, saying that the economy has been harsh to them under this particular administration. We hope they can have better life, in the coming days.
Well, we hope that things ease up for them and things become, better for both workers, active workers, and those who have retired. This is not going through the fact that there will be a change of guards this month across the state, many states, and at the national level. It's only right that this scorecard is coming in right now and is really, really not looking up for the
Another
workers.
thing that I would like to point out is that if the workforce of a particular country is not happy, then it's really a terrible one. If they are saying this about this administration, then it leaves only little more to be said about the performance of an administration, really.
All right, so below that story, there's a picture there of Chief of Air Staff Air Marshal Oladayo Amoru and top officers of the Nigeria Air Force and their spouses at an interdenominational service on the 2023 Nigeria Air Force Day in Abuja on Sunday. That was yesterday. Colorful events there. You can see the women in their white and blue attire and also see the naval officers just beneath that. On page 8, opposition's rigging claims fraudulent. Federal government insists. Opposition rigging claim fraudulent. Federal government insists. Well, I do not understand. I understand that the federal government is peopled with same party, same ideology persons with whoever emerged winner of the election. So it's important that they also come out to, because the federal government also conducted the election through INEC. Buhari has always said that his legacy would be to conduct free and fair elections. I can understand why the federal government is tackling claims of rigging and describing them as fraudulent. I can understand that, but it's left for the courts to decide, not the federal government making that statement there.
It's important to really reiterate that point. It's left to the court to decide. And if the people say that to them, the elections were not free, fair, or credible, or as you seem they were, or as you think they were, as it seems they were, then I don't think the federal government has much justification to keep reiterating this particular point. And that is why the cases have been taken to court. And the petitions have begun. Let's see where they all end and who gets what, whose statements are justified at the end.
Well, let's see and let's get to the court. Well, on page 4, the red story there, 2 suspects caught concealing cannabis in Gari's sack. Almost every Sunday, you go through the social media handle of the NDLEA and you see them reporting cases of, busted drug mules. You see them showing us how they've been able to arrest and apprehend people who tried to conceal drugs in different ways, in different manners.
This particular time, it's scary.
Yes, it's weird how these people keep coming up with different techniques to push drugs, and kudos to the NDLEA for being up to task, for really standing toe to toe with the drug lords and drug barons, as it were. Now on page 32, CBN supplies more new Naira notes to banks. CBN supplies more new Naira notes to banks. Hopefully, that will bring about the proliferation of new notes. Hopefully, to make it more available, make the notes more available and accessible to the ordinary people.
Yeah, and it would also seem that some of the reports that were done on the new Naira notes got to, the expected quarters or the right quarters, and probably that's why we're seeing, a change in that, or CBN, giving us a statement that there will be more supply of new Naira notes to banks. It's a good one, because really before this report started coming in, it's been a wonder why we're not seeing the new Naira notes again and just seeing old Naira notes in circulation. And especially as they said before that they had destroyed the old notes. But thank God that, we have, some sort of statement from them after a long time.
Well, we have a statement from the CBN now. Possibly we'll be seeing more new notes in circulation in the coming days. On page 11, unsold goods stock rises by 52%, coming from the manufacturers. And on page 7, don't attack embassy staff. Ambassador warns stranded Nigerian students. Do not attack embassy staff. Ambassador warns stranded Nigerian students. On page 7. On page 31, federal government dumps 5% telecom tax waiver. You can get more on that story on page 31 of the Punch newspaper. But that's all there is on that paper this morning.
Well, moving on to The Guardian. The Guardian newspaper says workers lament 8 years of unkept promises as minimum wage loses value. Workers lament 8 years of unkept promises as minimum wage loses value, and that's on page 6. And the minimum wage that was agreed to at the time was 30,000 naira, Emmanuel, if I'm correct. And really, it's really sad that the state of Nigeria today, you can't really have much with 30,000 naira. And if that's exactly what you're earning in a month, that's what the minimum thing you can earn. Not many people are even earning 30,000 naira. We have many below that particular level of earning. And it's really terrible, the state of things in the country. And if workers are lamenting for 8 years of this particular hardship and unkept promises, then I think it's something that really should be looked into, especially as we're having another administration taking over later in the month. And we can see pictures of the May Day celebration by the Nigeria Labour Congress here on the face of the Guardian newspaper. We can see people out there. I'm not sure many of them are happy. It's even captured in the statement. I'm not sure many of them are happy. They are out probably to agitate for a better working condition. But below that story, again, Lagos-Ibadan road repair misses Fashola's deadline. Lagos-Ibadan road repair misses Fashola's deadline. And that's on page 9 of the Guardian newspaper. And beside the story, still on page 9, why Lagos FAN demolished buildings in Ajao Estate. And that is on page 9 to get more insight into the story. And on page 2, over 2,500 undocumented Nigerian students stranded in Sudan varsities. Over 2,500 undocumented Nigerian students stranded in Sudan varsities. That's on page 2. Well, we heard about 5,000 people, and majority of them being students. Now we're having another figure of 2,500, over 2,500 undocumented Nigerian students stranded in Sudan. So I think we're still having the documented ones being evacuated from Sudan, and right now there's another figure of undocumented Nigerians. I think the federal government may be looking into that aspect as well. But on page 19 of The Guardian, Nigeria loses $4.5 billion yearly to foreign artisans in construction industry. Nigeria loses $4.5 billion yearly to foreign artisans in construction industry. I've always wondered why we have foreign artisans majorly in our construction, industry, when we have capable hands here in Nigeria who can handle such. But then it says now that Nigeria loses $4.5 billion yearly to foreign artisans in construction industry. Then to the last story, that's at the bottom strip of the paper, of the Guardian newspaper, page 6. NIN issuance nears 100 million as government intensifies data harmonization. NIN issuance nears 100 million as government intensifies data harmonization. That's on page 6 of The Guardian. And that brings us to the end of the stories of The Guardian on The Guardian newspaper.
All right, so we've taken the first of the papers, but let's take a break now. A quick break. When we'll come back, we'll bring you the other papers.
The name Adolf Hitler exudes a gale of bars from millions of people who were victims of his autocratic rule and love, from fanatical supporters of his imperial aggression. Born April 20, 1889, at a small Austrian town sandwiched between Austro-German frontier, Adolf Hitler spent most of his childhood in Linz, the capital of Upper Austria. As a very prominent stakeholder in the horrific events of conflicts in Europe, Adolf Hitler could simply go off as the sole mover of the Second World War. 40 million Jews were murdered in the gas chambers of various Nazi camps on the orders of Adolf Hitler. Thousands of Adolf Hitlers still live in Germany today, but the majority of them are elderly and were named before the end of the Second World War. As the name pales into vanishing rarity, 13 children, according to official records, were named Adolf Hitler between 2006 and 2013. Western Spring Television identifies Adolf Hitler as a major character in history. Ahmadu Bello, Prince Royal, was born 6th of December 1910 at Raba Village, Sokoto, northwestern Nigeria. His father was a district head and heir apparent to the Sultanate throne from the house of Usmanu Danfodio, a religious and social reformer who brought the Habib dynasty under the Fulani Caliphate in the beginning of the 19th century. Ahmadu Bello raised the bar of political consciousness and participation when, in 1944, he engineered the establishment of the Northern People's Congress (NPC) as the first political party in northern Nigeria and the rallying point for politicians in the region before independence. History will not forget Ahmadu Bello for his charisma and political sagacity, which provided easy passage for his kinsmen to assume political and administrative positions in Nigeria's post-independence era. The distinguished elder statesman and Sardauna of Sokoto has his face on his country's 200 naira currency as a mark of honor to one of the architects of Nigeria's independence. Western Spring Television identifies Ahmadu Bello as a watershed character in history. This iconic African presents the narrative of a man destined to exert an imperishable global influence in Western education. His was a story of a freeborn, captured and sold into slavery. He was born in Oshogun, a native Yoruba village near Iseyin in Okeogun axis of southwest Nigeria. Samuel Ajayi Crowther was the foundation student of Fora Bay College, Sierra Leone, the foremost university where the pioneer set of native Africans were educated. Samuel Ajayi Crowther's greatest contribution to humanity was his translation of the Holy Bible into the Yoruba language. The man who authored the Yoruba dictionary was also credited with the translation of English classic hymns into Yoruba and the Ekwere languages. Samuel Ajayi Crowther's private residence in Badagry, incidentally the first story building in Nigeria, is an Akaba museum dedicated to the memory of Africa's first bishop. Western Spring Television identifies Samuel Ajayi Crowther as a watershed character in history.
Welcome back. It's still Morning Spring on Western Spring Television, and we're still bringing you the newspaper review segment. So let's begin. Let's kick off again with the Daily Trust paper. Over 500 Nigerian students stranded at Sudan-Egypt border. Our passports seized. We have no food, water. Students, we're doing our best. Envoy. NAF planes land in Egypt. Ceasefire ends. Dangote partners federal government. Air peace on resettling evacuees. As on page 4. And a picture beneath it is this Saudi Royal Navy there, trying to bring back Sudan Saudi citizens. But let's look at the incident affecting Nigerian students now. Over 500 of them stranded at the Sudan-Egypt border. Egypt saying that they won't allow anyone enter without obtaining visas. Just some complicated international relations at this point, international diplomacy being put to the test. Some rules are really cast in stone, but analysts have said that, well, you can make exceptions. These people are fleeing a volatile situation. They are fleeing a war zone. You probably can bend a little, but the fear is also the transition phase. Is it just going to be a passage of people who are stranded, or will some persons who are unscrupulous take advantage of that to remain in that country illegally? So these are some of the issues. But the Nigerian envoy is there saying that they're doing their best to ensure that the students are returned to the country. Below that story, bandits kill 14 Kebbi Zamfara, is on page 24 of the Daily Trust. Again, death toll from banditry and terrorism rising just after the elections. We're beginning to see an uptick in some of these incidents, and I'm glad that the papers are reporting them for what they are. It's no longer a clash between so and so. It's what it is, an outright killing, of people, most of them, all of them, even defenseless in the face of these attacks. Yeah. That's on page 24. Edo farmer commits suicide after stabbing wife over infidelity. 4.3 million face severe hunger in Borno, Adamawa, Yobe, is coming from the World Food Program. APC legal advisor 6 Northwest vice chairs expulsion, part of the crisis rocking the APC at the national level in recent times. Below the nameplate, agents kick over 100% increase in cargo handling charges. We are ready for census, awaiting Tinubu NPC. That comes after President Muhammadu Buhari approved the postponement of the census on Saturday. It was scheduled for May 3rd to 5th this year. About over 800 million naira budgeted for it. At the same time, we're not getting the conduct of the census because of so many reasons. And now the NPC, National Population Commission, saying it's waiting for the Tinubu administration directive. Drunk Kwara police officer excretes in uniform, CP orders arrest. So I believe that when we see some of these police officers behave the way they behave, we can easily understand the extension of brutality and high-handedness to Nigerian citizens. I mean, if the police officer can be this drunk to the extent of doing what he did, you can imagine how he will see civilian who would have come across him at that particular time. So it's good that the CP has ordered his arrest and that he will be taken into custody, but we hope it doesn't end there, and that there are more efforts to sanitize the police force, and ensure that only people who are of sound mind are really part of the force. Yeah. That's all on the Daily Trust this morning.
All right, on the Nation newspaper, the headline says, "You remain sore losers," federal government tells PDP and Labour Party. And the writer says, "Don't preempt tribunal outcome. Opposition parties fire back." Don't preempt tribunal outcome. Opposition parties fire back. Still on the tribunal cases, and the federal government still wanting to maintain its statement that the election was free, fair, and credible. But just above that story on page 6 of the Nation, Ohane is a leader. Iwayanwu asks Buhari to free Kanu before May 29. Ohanaeze leader Iwuanyanwu asks Buhari to free Kanu before May 29. And below that story, Sudan evacuation, 637 Nigerians stranded at border. 637 Nigerians stranded at border. Egypt delays clearance. Federal government moves Port Sudan route. And that's still on the Sudan story. Have different figures of Nigerians that are stranded right there at the border. And to the bottom strip of the paper and page 6, CBN, more new notes to be in circulation soon. Still on the promise, and why census was shifted by NPC. We can get more of that story on page 6 of the Nation newspaper. And just above the nameplate, APC legal advisor recommends Lickman's expulsion. That's on page 5 of the Nation newspaper. Workers are engine room of growth, says Lawan. That's on page 5 of the Nation newspaper. And on page 6 still, 3 Harvard students for UK exchange program. 3 Harvard students for UK exchange program. And Rivers Fest to host Tinubu, says Wike. Rivers Fest to host Tinubu, says Wike. It's on page 6 of the Nation newspaper. As we went to the last story there, that's oil price fluctuation threatens budget implementation. And it's right there beside the pictures of Tinubu there, and that was taken in Abuja. Says President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu flanked by Borno State Governor Prof. Babagana Zulum, and an elder in Borno APC right there on paper, and Tinubu, the president-elect, is flanked by both men. That's all the stories we have on the Nation newspaper.
Well, thank you for staying with us, for keeping faith with us on Morning Spring. This morning, we've been doing the papers for you. We've gone through the Punch, the Guardian, the Nation, and the Daily Trust this morning. Well, that's all we can take. We'll take a break, and when we come back, it will be time to discuss with our guest. Today is May Day, the 1st of May, Workers' Day. It's supposed to be a celebration of workers, but it's taking a different dimension because the scorecards given out by the workers and retirees is really not encouraging for the outgoing administration at the national and subnational level. We'll be taking a look at that when we return from the break.
The 1914 Amalgamation Treaty is synonymous to the birth of Nigeria. Frederick Lugard, a British Army captain and an outlaw who struck gold in Africa, became the instrument used by destiny to make it happen. The amalgamation of Nigeria was designed for economic reasons by the colonial administration to offset Northern Protectorate budget deficit by Southern Protectorate surplus returns. The amalgamation had ad initio created imbalance in the economic political structure of Nigeria and was responsible for the persistent hiccups in the efforts to forge a united country till today. Nigeria's amalgamation was labeled as the mistake of 1914 by native Northern conservatives who neither wanted it nor contributed anything significant to its sustenance. Western Springer Television identifies with Amalgamation Treaty of 1914 as a watershed event in history. Born Jeremiah Oyeni Obafemi on March 6, 1905, Obafemi Awolowo was a prime architect of Nigeria's independence and most consummate advocate of free education and social welfare in Africa's most populous nation. Erudite politician, thinker, and philosopher, Awo was fondly addressed by associates and political colleagues, brought his unique attributes to bear on governance in the defunct Western region. He administered as leader of government business and the premier between 1955 and 1958. Obafemi Awolowo's premiership witnessed pioneering in multi-sectoral policy initiatives and execution. The Western region under his administration paraded several enviable records. First television station in Africa, first real estate in Nigeria, first high-rise building in Nigeria, first modern sports stadium in Nigeria, first agricultural settlement in Nigeria, first modern civil service secretariat in Nigeria, and first industrial estate in Nigeria. His face is on 100 naira denomination as a mark of honor for his distinguished services to his country. Western Spring Television identifies Obafemi Awolowo as a major character in history. The Berlin Conference of 1884 defined the configuration of Africa, which hitherto existed as a continent of multiple kingdoms and empires under native rulers. The conference, otherwise referred to as Congo Conference, regulated European colonization and trade in Africa as initiated by German leader Otto von Bismarck. The Berlin Conference is often called the scramble for and partitioning of Africa, as each of the imperial powers carved separate portions of the continent for themselves without recourse to racial and cultural identities and differences. 137 years after the Berlin Conference was held, Africa remains a legitimized playground for European nations that sought to exploit its wealth and resources and manipulate its human capital to promote trades and investments of Western powers. Western Spring Television identifies Berlin Conference as a major event in history. Gbadamosi Adegoke Adelabu was a prominent figure in Ibadan politics and Western region before Nigeria's independence. He was a key founder of the National Council of Nigeria and the Cameroons, a political party that held lofty the torch of liberty for the two West African countries. He carved a niche for himself as a wordsmith.
Welcome back to the show. It's still Morning Spring on Western Spring Television, and we've been reaching you from StarTimes channel 190 on the DTT platform, and the conversation has also been on all our social media handles: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course YouTube, where you can watch us live and subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch up with episodes of all the programs that you've mixed. Well, it's time to take a guest for you now. We're looking at some issues. Like I said earlier, it's May Day, it's May 1st. Yeah, Workers' Day is supposed to be a day of celebration, but this year things have been very different. We're joined live in the studio now by Comrade Wale Adebisi, the Executive Director of Olaoni Center for Social Research. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you very much. Happy May Day.
Oh, same to you. Same to you. He's also a right activist, so of course he has an understanding of some of the problems facing workers. But let's begin with the scorecard. How would you score the Buhari administration and that of the governors underneath him, those who will be leaving office by May 29th, as regards to workers' welfare?
Well, there is no yardstick to score the administration in terms of the workers' welfare. You know, the neoliberal policy, economic policies of this government has pauperized Nigerians, pauperized workers, to the extent that it is difficult for you to even put the government on a score scale on their intervention for the workers. Is it the minimum wage, which is a maximum problem to workers? It has not been. There is. It was the minimum wage was not impactful in the lives of the workers or life of Nigerians. When the regulation policy of government in terms of petroleum is now, you know, it's not in the favor of the workers. It's not in the favor of Nigerian masses. However, there is no way you can then score government. You cannot score this government. You cannot place them on any pedestal simply because they are not. The administration is not impactful in the lives of the working people. The workers in Nigeria are growing poorer and poorer every day, and that is why you see the leadership compromising the interests of the workers. You know, the neoliberal economic policy is not in favor of Nigerian workers. And you can see that everywhere. The same minimum wage. What is the minimum wage impact in the lives of Nigerians or in the life of workers? I think that's the only way. Now recently, the federal government says they are downsizing, then they are now increasing the salaries of workers at the federal level by 40%. What happened to the state? Are they not Nigerian citizens? Is it now that the government is now removing subsidy? And when they remove subsidy, who is going to bear the brunt? Is it not Nigerian workers? It is. So how can you now score such an administration? If you want to score them, they score 0. In terms of their intervention for Nigerian workers, they are not being considered in terms of, the social, the human capital index is very low. Put them into consideration, and it has been on and on like that. And have you seen any workers talking about removal of subsidy? There was a huge protest in 2011 over that. All along, Nigerian Labour Congress will be at the front burner of any protest or protest against any anti-government policies. Have you heard that? How many times have you heard that? It is compromise here and there. We have unions without unionism. So they cannot engage the government vigorously on their own interest or the interest of workers. And what do you have? It's poverty everywhere. When you hand salary, it's like you are handing nothing. So the unions we have lacks the spirit of unionism. That's why I said that we have unions without unionism.
Okay, so let's look at what you refer to as neoliberal economic policy. For you, what constitutes a neoliberal economic policy.
Those are the things they have reeled out. Even the incoming government has, said it. The credit regime, as credit, you live on credit. He has said it that when he comes in, you have a student loan, you are going to take loan for mortgage and all that. Who will be as the brunt? America is doing it. Then you live your life permanently on credit. It's still neoliberal. It's anti-people. When you remove subsidy and there is no alternative. If they remove, have they talked about the alternative? The only alternative they talked about is that they were going to take loan of $800 million for 50 million Nigerians. What kind of policy? Those are the neoliberal policies. It's only in the interest of the World Bank and IMF. They dance to the tune of IMF and World Bank. So it's a neoliberal policy. How is that one going to be impactful? We have 200 million Nigerian populace. The government is taking loan to only take care of 50 million Nigerian populace out of 200 million. What happened to the 150 million people? What is the offense? Are workers not there? In a normal climb or in a sinner climb where you have removal of subsidy, you put the best or better alternative in place. If you are removing fuel subsidy from fuel, then the government should be able to provide adequate transportation, the easiest form of transportation, and affordable transportation system must be put in place. Take for instance, there will be rail system, which is going to be very cheap. Mass transit, which is going to be very cheap. Then you give car loans, not the cars that you are going to give special car loans to workers, so that they can take care of housing loan. Car loan should not be something you are going to struggle for. If you are removing subsidy, you know it's going to affect almost everybody. Then you have to also, you see what happened in the education sector. They want students now to be taking loan. As the incoming government says, well, student will have a student loan. When you take loan, you use 20 years and you won't get job to pay it back. If you get job, you are going to use 20 years to pay it back, more than 20 years. Those who travel to America to go and work there, and then they now took student loan, you cannot see them traveling home. They can't come back home until they finish that loan. Some will be paid for 20, 25 years. So it's permanent slavery. Those are neoliberal policies. It's quite anti-people and anti-workers. And incidentally, like I told you, we have unions, trade unions, we have unionism. Leadership of the trade union have compromised seriously. And the essential factors, the essential ingredients of, of committed leadership is not there again. They cannot protect the interests of the workers. So you find out that the government just have a free day to do anything. If the leadership is like that of what we have experienced in the pre-colonial, during the colonial period, the leadership of labours that we experience, that Nigerians experience, during the colonial period, post-colonial period, and during the military, you will discover that Nigeria will not be at this place. Well, the leadership of labour brings about development. The moment the leadership of labour has compromised his own standard, his own interest, there can be development in the country. Yes, there can be development. Chief Pa Michael Imodu late was the first labor leader #1 in Nigeria. Their own commitment led to the decolonization of Nigeria, and post-colonial period too. In post-colonial is Nigeria become a neo-colonial state, so it's not really different from the colonial. So you find out the likes of the Wahab Goodluck, now late, EU Bazi, Alhaji Comrade Hassan Sumonu is in Osogbo here. All these people were committed to Nigerian workers, and they put in their lives into it. Their lives is organically, they were organically linked. Their commitment is organically linked with their lives. So that's why you see security agents looking for them everywhere. because of Nigerian workers. But what do you have today? Labour leadership have turned themselves to election canvassers for ruling class. For the ruling, they are our enemy. They are the one helping them to win elections. Just because they want to enrich their pocket. They abandon the workers. They take care of themselves. You know. So this parochial thinking towards, you know, trade unionism in Nigeria today is just making the whole situation to become much more messier for Nigerian workers.
All right, let's go away from that union issue for now. But let's talk about the fact that Nigeria's debt profile could hit 77 trillion naira in June of this year. Now, in the face of this imminent debt profile, do you think the Nigerian government could have done better than the 40% pay rise with all of this that we have at hand?
Since the 40% pay rise is even undemocratic and unpatriotic, you know, to Nigerians. So I think we should not even talking about the pay rise. The pay rise should be across the board. What happened to the workers in the state? Are they not workers? Are they not working for one government or the other? They are working for government. What about the workers at the local government level? Government is, although in Nigeria we have government without governance. So you find out that we just have government, some group of people who leverage on the state powers to favor themselves and their cronies. So they don't even think about Nigerians. And it happens, so that's why you see them every 4 years. They seek for vote with the intention of buying it. They purchase vote. So it is vote buy because Nigerian people don't matter to them. They are not linked with the government. There's a dislocation between Nigerian people and the government and the leadership of the state. So you find out that there is no way they will not be borrowing. Borrowing for what? You can borrow for development of infrastructure. You cannot borrow to pay salaries. See, I heard sometimes, maybe about last year, that the federal government is borrowing to pay salaries of the federal workers. In a Senate climb, how do you do that? You cannot borrow to pay workers. You must generate, because workers have to create wealth. When they create this wealth, where does it go? How is it being managed by the same government? You have corruption. You now borrow money. How do you to pay workers? The corruption is rising to the eye every day. So how do you now, when you borrow money now to trillions, who will pay back? It's not Nigerians, and these Nigerian workers will work towards it to make sure that the money is paid, the debt is paid. They overburden the Nigerians, they overburden the leadership of the state, overburden the workers to favor their own interest. That is just the bedrock of the whole thing. Now, how can we now come out of this debt? In 1999, I think General Olusegun Obasanjo was then the head of the Nigeria head of state, head of government. He made sure, or he tried as much as possible to ensure that some of the debts were, written off by the imperialist states who granted the loans. Well, these loans also were granted in an arrangement, not really impactful. Nigerians, you cannot see the essence of the loan they take from the World Bank and IMF on Nigerians. You can't see it. So now, since that time, we have now accumulated more debt, higher than that of the one that was written off in this regime, the present regime that's about to end this month. So now Nigerian workers have a lot of responsibility. Thank God we are having a more conscious and clear-headed, leadership coming in now on board for the Nigerian Labour Congress. That's in terms of Joe Ajero. He is more conscious. He knows this is the first time we are going to have that kind of conscious leadership. Who is an intellectual becoming Nigerian Labour since May 29, 1999, the leadership of Nigerian Labour Congress have not had intellectual leading them at that center, at that labor center. So it's affecting Nigerians. And I think with Joe Ajero coming on board now, he's more clear-headed, he's more conscious, he has a working class consciousness. And that is why we feel he's going to do better, putting the Nigerian workers on a strong pedestal to be able to collectively, agitate for Nigerian workers, make sure that their interest is well protected this time around, and the economy should be improved, particularly the incoming government of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So there's still hope for us to come out of the debt. If the incoming government is willing, then there's going to be a way. Now, I don't know how. You see, Nigeria has a funny political structure. The man that is coming in, some people claim that they are owners of Nigeria who are known to be called cabals. They are going to be the one to give him the agenda. He may have his own agenda, but they will not allow you. They may not allow him to actualize his agenda. But then, the agenda of this cabal, which we have been experiencing over the years, has been anti-people, anti-workers. So, Nigerians should brace up to make sure that they take their destiny into their hands, particularly Nigerian workers. Well, they always be at the front burner of any agitation. So if they do not compromise this time around, Nigeria may be free from these shackles of oppression, of neoliberal policies from neo-colonial state leaders of Nigeria.
Okay, so let's come back to basically the May Day now, the Labor Day. Before we go on a break and then come back to discuss other issues, what did you make of the fact that the back and forth between the Labour now, the Eagle Square was initially approved for use for the May Day parade. That approval was withdrawn, and the NLC issued a statement saying everybody should go on the street, only for the Minister of Labour to say that the approval has been re-given and there was some overzealous persons within the FCDA, Federal Capital Development Authority, who withdrew the approval for the use of the Eagle Square for May Day celebration. That has always been the norm. The parade has always been done there, and now there's some sort of back and forth being blamed on overzealous FCDA officials. What do you make of that?
Yeah, because the leadership is anti-democratic. They cannot tolerate the leadership of Nigerian workers now, because they are more conscious. They have the consciousness of working class, and they are more conscious in terms of they are well informed. Joe Ajero is well informed. He is not ready to compromise. He has been the leader of the Union of Nigeria Electricity. So, and then they know him. He has been a journalist at Vanguard. So he is an intellectual who understands the plight of the working Nigeria, the working people of Nigeria. He understands their plight. He has been with them for long. Then he has been, he was supposed to be the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress. He was reached out, and they formed their own union. They just came back together some few years ago with the Labour. They went back to the Nigerian Labour Congress Center. They just joined them back. Then they gave them now. Government is afraid of him. They are afraid of his leadership. That's why you see all this intolerance. Because they know the Labor Day is the only day, that Nigerian workers can tell Nigerian government this is what they want. They don't want poor condition of service. They want review on the wages and salary of Nigerian workers. So they don't want that. They are going now. The person coming in is not different from them. Anyway, they are the same. But how he's going to manage himself, because you can see his statement, he made a statement, the incoming government, come. If anybody protests the oil subsidy, they can go to anywhere and protest. It will not change his stand. The subsidy is going to be removed. But these same characters now went on protest in 2011 against the subsidy. They call it that all of them were saying that subsidy was a scam. Abi? That is a scam. In 2011, everybody believed them. When they came in, they didn't remove the same subsidy. Now they said they want to remove the subsidy. As the incoming president is coming. Now, he insisted. But he has been part of the subsidy himself. He has been part of the subsidy. There is none of them that will not know. That does not belong. They are internal people. They know they use the proceeds of the subsidy to contest elections. And what happened? It's only when we want to diss ourselves that that one we want to panabit the truth. They are all part of the same arrangement. Don't forget that even the Buhari himself, who is the president now, doubled as the minister for petroleum. And since we know Buhari, since he has been in government, as 1976, 1977, 1978, he was the Federal High Commissioner for Petroleum, under whose administration $2.8 million was missing. Remember this fella song, and then they set up an inquiry. They said no money, no loss, and that is the end of that matter. During Babangida regime, there was this windfall, windfall during the Iraq and America, Iraq and Kuwait. Then they had a lot of overage, and about $12 billion. It could not be accounted for. So it has been on and on like that. Now that Buhari has become the president and double as the minister for petroleum, it is under this regime that the NNPC declare that in the last, for some years now, they have not had any profit. They could not return any profit. They have not had any revenue from the oil. So because of subsidy. Now they want to remove the subsidy. And somebody say, you can go and kill yourself. That is insensitivity on this own part. And then it's civilian, all these are display of the civilian dictatorship. And that is why they could not grant the Nigerian Labour Congress. It's absurd that they could not grant them a place to, use for their occasion, the Workers' Day. So to now express their feelings towards the government, the government is insensitive. And I think the incoming one may be more insensitive because it's going to be pure capitalistic agenda. It has a capitalist and imperialist orientation.
All right. So we'll come back from that break and talk about this angle too and what it means for the Nigerian workers going forward. So we'll take a break. We've been talking to Comrade Wale Adebisi, the Executive Director of Laoni Center for Social Research. He's also a human rights activist. To stay with us, we'll be back after this break.
The name Adolf Hitler exudes a gale of bars from millions of people who were victims of his autocratic rule and love, from fanatical supporters of his imperial aggression. Born April 20, 1889, at a small Austrian town sandwiched between Austro-German frontier, Adolf Hitler spent most of his childhood in Linz, the capital of Upper Austria. As a very prominent stakeholder in the horrific events of conflicts in Europe, Adolf Hitler could simply go off as the sole mover of the Second World War. 40 million Jews were murdered in the gas chambers of various Nazi camps on the orders of Adolf Hitler. Thousands of Adolf Hitlers still live in Germany today, but the majority of them are elderly and were named before the end of the Second World War. As the name pales into vanishing rarity, 13 children, according to official records, were named Adolf Hitler between 2006 and 2013. Western Spring Television identifies Adolf Hitler as a major character in history. This iconic African presents the narrative of a man destined to exert an imperishable global influence in Western education. His was a story of a freeborn, captured and sold into slavery. He was born in Oshogun, a native Yoruba village near Iseyin in Okeogun axis of southwest Nigeria. Samuel Ajayi Crowther was the foundation student of Fora Bay College, Sierra Leone, the foremost university where the pioneer set of native Africans were educated. Samuel Ajayi Crowther's greatest contribution to humanity was his translation of the Holy Bible into the Yoruba language. The man who authored the Yoruba dictionary was also credited with the translation of English classic hymns into Yoruba and the Ekwere languages. Samuel Ajayi Crowther's private residence in Badagry, incidentally the first story building in Nigeria, is an archival museum dedicated to the memory of Africa's first bishop. Western Spring Television identifies Samuel Ajayi Crowther as a watershed character in history. The 1914 Amalgamation Treaty is synonymous to the birth of Nigeria. Frederick Lugard, a British Army captain and an outlaw who struck gold in Africa, became the instrument used by destiny to make it happen. The amalgamation of Nigeria was designed for economic reasons by the colonial administration to offset Northern Protectorate budget deficit by Southern Protectorate surplus returns. The amalgamation had ad initio created imbalance in the economic political structure of Nigeria and was responsible for the persistent hiccups in the efforts to forge a united country till today. Nigeria's amalgamation was labeled as the mistake of 1914 by native northern conservatives who neither wanted it nor contributed anything significant to its sustenance. Western Spring Television identifies with Amalgamation Treaty of 1914 as a watershed event in history. Born Jeremiah Oyeni Obafemi on March 6, 1905, Obafemi Awolowo was a prime architect of Nigeria's independence and most consummate advocate of free education and social welfare in Africa's most populous nation. Erudite politician, thinker and philosopher, Awo was fondly addressed by associates and political colleagues, brought his unique attributes to bear on governance in the defunct Western region. He administered as leader of government business and the premier between 1955 and 1958. Obafemi Awolowo's premiership witnessed pioneering in multi-sectoral policy initiatives and execution. The Western region under his administration paraded several enviable records. First television station in Africa, first real estate in Nigeria, first high-rise building in Nigeria, first modern sports stadium in Nigeria, first agricultural settlement in Nigeria, first modern civil service secretariat in Nigeria, and first industrial estate in Nigeria. His face is on 100...
All right, so welcome back to the show, Morning Spring on Western Spring Television. We're still looking at the Workers' Day celebration and what it means going forward. We're still with us in the studio is Comrade Wale Adebisi, the Executive Director, Olaoni Center for Social Research, who's also a rights activist. We're looking at Labor Day and industrial relations. Now, in the past 8 years, we've had so many industrial actions. The one that readily comes to mind was the ASU strike that went on for so long. You had the picketing of the CBN, you had that recently of the aviation workers. What does this say about workers' satisfaction with the current administration?
You see, a lot of things has gone wrong with our labor centers and their leadership. You see, in the past, it is a collective action that should be in the interest of the workers. That's their primary responsibility, to ensure that there's a wage increase and then making sure that the working condition is better for Nigerian workers and their families. Then ensure that there is protection, in their working places and their safety. All those things are not there. If ASUU could go on strike for 8 months, and then we have Nigerian labor leadership there that time, nothing was done. So the 8 month has gone. The 8 month has gone. When we are buying fuel for 800 naira this year, the NLC was there. They were also buying it. No statement was issued. No statement came from them. The present day leadership of the Nigerian Labour Congress have sold their birthright. Unlike before, when under the decree 22, decree 44, decree 22 that formed Nigerian Labour Congress in 1978 under the leadership of Comrade Hassan Sumonu, you find out that there were better agitation, collective bargaining, and labours were getting concessions. What concessions have they gained since 1999? No concessions for workers. And this is due to the poor leadership of Nigerian Labour Congress. Nigerian Labour Congress. They have not been able to come out vigorously to demand and make a request from government. They are their right. They are the right of the workers. Instead, you find out they are just going to them at night to collect money when the election is coming, so that then that money goes to private pocket. What happened to the rest of Nigerian workers? That is why you have all this, uncoordinated, what they call, they are not serious industrial action, but just picketing. Picketing cannot be taken for industrial action. It's just a warning. Oh, you are cheating our people. You are cheating Nigerian workers. Okay, now, what about Chinese companies that employ Nigerians as slave labor? What happened to the Indian companies that employ Nigerian workers, Nigerian people as slave laborers? So, and then some die there under a poor working condition. What have they done? Who is making intervention on their behalf? So you find out that they are just scattered picketing. It's not serious industrial action coming out with a program to warn the government and the allies that Nigerian worker is supposed to poor working condition, is supposed to poor salaries. Look at the minimum wage. That's the height of an embarrassment to some of us who are Nigerians. Now, okay, the minimum wage is supposed to be reviewed under 5 years. It is a law. Nothing was done by Buhari administration. After 10 years, they said, oh, they are now increasing minimum wage to how much? Is it not the same 30,000? That the economy is bad. But the economy is bad. You cannot you cannot check corruption. The economy is bad. You find that terrorists and kidnappers, they are having a field day. How would the economy be good when you are not doing the necessary thing as a government? That is why I said that we have government without governance. Some group of people just leverage on state powers to now favor their cronies, favor themselves. They don't bother. When Buhari came in, he promised Nigerians that, okay, Jonathan was not a military man, and that is why terrorism was growing. But when he came in, what happened? It was worse. You now have herdsmen joining them, and then you have other terrorist groups coming up, and you discover people who are acting, who are go between the government and these terrorists. Nothing was done. Gumi go to the terrorist camp without any escort. Nothing was done. A man was discovered that from Saudi Arabia, he's negotiating, he's the one on the train attack, he's the one that was going between the terrorists, and they discover all this. We don't even know the whereabouts of that man again. See what happened to the wreck of Adamawa. They said they don't know his whereabouts. See all these things is a pointer to the fact that we have government without governance.
Okay, so on Saturday, the National Association of Resident Doctors issued a 2-week ultimatum to the Buhari administration to fulfill some demands bordering on welfare. You know, I want you to let's talk about Nigeria.
All right.
Okay, so let's go on a break now. We'll come back after this.
Arrested, affected, sound, found. What do we see? What do we say? Flowing from a spring. A fact A to Z. Check and confirm. Ever is pounding current events. Traveling down from the business gist to the globally arising happenings, to the sports news, to the bittersweet infos. Guided transmission, even diffusion, vast and fast. Detailed facts are fled. Within seconds, nuggets of words that flew across borders are fired. Stories short and long, wrapped in bundles of words, broken and dissected as it is, except misheard. This is the news as it is.
Welcome back to the show. So I was asking Comrade at ABC earlier, before we went on break, that the NARD, National Association of Resident Doctors, is giving an ultimatum to the federal government, talking about how they need to, the CONMES issue withdrawal of that bill, saying that they have to practice 5 years before they're given a license. Now, there's been so much accusation of the government reneging on agreement. The Ministry of Labor and Employment, alongside the federal government itself in totality, has been accused over time by workers of not sticking to agreement, of going back on agreement. What do you think that portends going forward if it remains the same?
You see, NMA have been a vociferous organization when it comes to agitation. You know, when Becker was the chairman of the president of NMA, he was incarcerated. That's Dr. Becker Kuti. And they have established a culture of resistance and agitation in NMA. So NMA, ASU, they are not part of NSC. They are independent of NSC. They can declare a national strike on their own, their organization. And they have the culture, a rich culture of struggles and resistance. So I respect them for that. When I heard about the bill, when I read about that bill, it's quite undemocratic. It's dictatorial. How can you tell me, after finishing from the university, that I don't have freedom again? You know? Then they want to enslave them. That's slavery. You should be free. Yeah, the Constitution is very clear. You should be free. There's freedom of work, freedom of expression, freedom of work. You can work anywhere. They should just go and challenge the government in court. I said, look at the labor minister himself. Is there any record that shows from his profile that shows that indicated that he has been on the side of the workers? No. When he was the governor. That's no. But he doesn't have that record. So that is why that under his own regime, the ASUU could go on strike for 8 months. You could see his attitude that time. It was nonchalant. He doesn't care. Now, it will still come during the COVID-19. He had problem with his enemy. And that is why you find out that in one day, about over 300 doctors wanted to leave Nigeria to go and look for job in other countries, particularly in Europe. Why? Because there is a poor working condition. But you see, workers don't just agitate for salaries increment. They also agitate about their working condition. The environment is not, is inclement, is hostile to them, so that they cannot be more productive. They cannot be productive under such an environment, and that is why they are saying, okay, if you want to promulgate such, if you want to pass such bill, or you want to make such law, nothing stops you from providing alternative. Nigerians cannot be taken as slaves. Nigeria should not be taken as a banana republic where everything goes. This is a democratic setting. Is there any indication of democracy in what you are doing? Democracy, form of government, is about the people. The people here are being ostracized. So we only have the people. You remove the crazy is what happened. Demo is removed. The crazy is in existence, but demo is removed from the government. So that's why I continue to say there can be government without governance. You see, how can you go ahead and say, oh, these doctors, after spending 7 or 8 years in the university, you have to work here under a poor condition, under a poor salary for 5 years before they can be granted license. That is wrong. It is wrong, and I think it's challengeable in the court of law. You see, nobody can take away your right unless if you give it freely. They should go and demand for their right in the law in the law court. This man, he doesn't even respect court order, the Minister for Labor and Employment. He doesn't respect the court order. They don't have regard for the law. But these people, I think they should. If court fails, they should take their destiny into their hand in the streets. Yes, that's the language the dictators, the language of dictators is to make sure you challenge them openly. If they are not challenged, they will go against. You see what happened? The ASUU insisted. They tricked ASUU into resuming. They have not. What have they granted? They are now coming out to say, oh, students will be given loan so that they can increase the school fees. They can now say, oh, every graduate, if you want to enter, you pay 1 million naira, but you get loan from government. Nigeria system that we know is inefficient. That you now apply for loan. That admission, they are going to deny you you are going to lose the admission. Then they put more burden on Nigerian parents. What is coming up now? Nigerians should brace up. During our days at NANS, during our days, we used to work together with Nigeria Labour Congress. That's what we call student-labor relationship. When Labour declares strike, Nigerian students we are going to declare, lecture boycott. So that time, before Nigerian students, Nigerian Union, National Union of students were destroyed. During our time, we joined Nigerian Labour Congress. When they declare strike, we give them support. We collaborate with them. We'll be on the street with the labor. But now, student leader goes to governor, goes to president, goes to commissioner, and turn themselves to their heads so that they can live better. destroy, everything is destroyed. And when the foundation is destroyed, what can the righteous do? So, but I think now, this negotiation between, it should not be the work of NMA alone. Nigerian Labour Congress must come at the front burner. You know, you can't just take away their rights.
Yeah.
No, one student that go to university to go and read medicine were not sponsored by government. They are sponsored by their parents. So how can their government now want to appropriate what does not belong to them? Now, they want to appropriate, they want to exploit them by telling them you must practice here for a number of years before you could be given a license. Then, you know, parents now will be sending their children to foreign countries to go and read medicine. And they will tell them not to come back home. Is that not the solution? So now, they are talking about brain drain. You want to force people to work for you here. That is forced labor. And I think Nigeria Labour Congress need to really come out more vigorously to oppose this step by the federal government.
All right. With the fact that you've raised that the Labour Congress has been compromised and probably corruption is, you know, from the top hierarchy, I mean, the hierarchy of the Labour Congress now. Do you think that going forward, even the incoming administration will take the Labour Congress seriously with any agitation or any negotiation?
You see, the kind of leader, the kind of democracy we have is a dictatorial democracy. It's an inheritance of the military regime, governed and controlled, operated a military constitution. So any leadership that is being produced by this constitution will be a dictator. You don't expect democracy from some, don't expect anything democratic from them. Simply because they inherited a military, which is of course a dictatorship regime, the military constitution. All of them were part of the military. You understand? At a particular time, the incoming government, apart from Buhari's military antecedent as a general, even the incoming governor has been a senator under a military regime. SDP, you know? So he was a senator under the military. Babangida was the head of state. Why was the senator under the Babangida's regime? So they have taken the imbibe the military culture. And that is why our democracy is like this. Unless if we want to continue to deceive ourselves, there is no Democrat among them. They are all dictators. And that is why he said that, oh, I am going to, when I get there, I will remove subsidy. Anybody can protest to high heaven. They are on their own. And you know, the state has a way of suppressing protest and agitation. They use state forces. They use security forces to do that. They'll go and crush them. That is what they rely on. So that they continue, the exploitation of Nigerian workers can continue under their regime. But then I don't see the incoming governor or the incoming president having a different style or a different perspective towards labor as we have had it before. I don't see any, if I see, if there is going to be difference, it's going to be minimal. The labor must brace up that they were going to enter into a battle, because somebody that want to practice capitalist economy, you know, which is basically maximization of profit and then exploitation based on exploitation of people, there is no way you can get good governance from there. Nigerian labor must not take this incoming government for granted. If they take them for granted, they be in for it. The Nigerian workers' condition will be poorer. They must be coming out vigorously now to challenge, you know, and take their right collectively. That will save us and save Nigerians a lot of things. And that is the only thing that the Nigerian leadership now should not compromise. They will not tolerate them, but they should not compromise. They too should not tolerate them. If the government fails to tolerate Nigerian labor leadership now, the Nigerian labor leadership should not also not tolerate them. They must challenge them at every step that is going to be anti-workers and anti-people. You see, basically, here in Nigeria, right from inception of Nigerian Labour Centers, that's the first Nigerian Labour Center was established in 1912. The second one was 1914. That is the Southern Nigeria Southern Civil Service Union. Then later, Nigerian Civil Service Union in 1914. Then in 1938, TUC was registered. Railway workers were the one that pulled out of the Nigerian Civil Service Union. They said they are too soft-spoken about the rights of the workers. They were treating government with a kiss glove. They are not hitting hard on the government on their right. Then Nigerian Railways Union was formed, out of Nigerian Civil Service Union, led by Chief late Pa Imodu, But the subsequent leadership, even post-colonial, were vigorous, vociferous people, who are working very hard. The likes of good luck. The likes of EU Basi, M.E. Kolagbodi, and then Comrade Hassan Sumonu in Osogbo here, who is an indigenous of Osogbo here. They were the one that put labor on a strong pedestal, and then there were concessions from government, though they were always visitors to security agents, and other. They were, but at the same time, they were gaining concessions for Nigerian workers. Now, in the past years, there has never been any concession to Nigerian workers since May 29, 1999. Go and check the record. But today, we are having Joe Ajero, an intellectual labor leader, at the ends of affairs now at the Labour Center, Nigerian Labour Congress. He should be able to change things. You see, there are a lot of people that Nigerian Labour Centers work with. There's a collaboration between Labour and the Civil Society Coalition. They call it LASCO. Those are the ones that activate any strike action from Nigerian Labour Congress. All along, it has been abandoned during the Oshiomhole regime. But now, Joe Ajero said he is going to resuscitate that coalition, that collaboration. Then there's also collaboration with Nigerian students and Nigerian Labour Congress. That thing is expected to also be reactivated so that there will be more collective efforts and a concerted one for that matter to challenge the government anti-people's policies and anti-workers policies.
All right, so thank you so much for your time on the show this morning. Comrade Wale Adebisi is the Executive Director of Research at the Executive Director at the Olaoni Center for Research. Thank you for your time this morning on the show.
Thank you very much. God bless you.
Yeah, happy workers and happy media once again.
I wish you the better of the year from the government.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's all on the show. I'll be back to tell you what's trending on social media after this break.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Temi Jokwe Ajijalongwola. Have a nice day.